Hello and welcome to the Art Teach podcasts. Today I'm here with artist Chris Rainham. Can you tell us a little bit about the Kin of the Cats exhibition and what it's all about?
Yeah, it's a touring exhibition going to lots of different venues in Lancashire. It's for visual artists and one storyteller and writer inspired by old Lancashire tales, responding to the stories in all our different ways, using a range of medium and responses.
And I believe that this exhibition has been thought about for the last 2 years. So how does it feel now that you've finally got the Art Council funding to go ahead with it all?
It's brilliant to get the funding to go ahead with it. We'd committed to having an exhibition at 5 venues anyway, so we were already making work. So it's been a long process, and it's been quite a painful one sometimes, but it's brilliant to have the money. The difference that makes is that instead of having a very small-scale exhibition, it means that we can add all the sort of value-added things, including the resources for schools, a proper book and catalogue, and lots of printed material, and also a proper archive of what we're actually doing.
So what's your background and where did you study?
I grew up in North Kent. I started studying there. I went to College of Design to do my foundation, and then I was in Wolverhampton to I did a BA in Fine Art, and then moved up to Manchester in 1990. So I'm a southerner moving steadily north.
So what do you love most about where you live?
I think what I really, really like is how close we are to the hills. Where I grew up, I always got lots of stick when I was at university because I said I come from Kent, and there was a particular lecturer who'd say, the soft underbelly of Britain, as if it was some sort of rural idyll of orchards and fields. But actually where I grew up was quite industrial. It was part of the dockyard was the main sort of employer for everybody. So what I really like about living where I live in North Manchester is the countryside. Particularly then in Lancashire and the places that we've sort of looked at involved with this exhibition, the hills and the moors and the landscapes are just amazing.
So has this inspired your practice?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I think I can't help but sort of respond to the stories in my own work. I'm very interested in flora and fauna in the natural world. That inspires me anyway. And so when I'm responding to the stories or reading the stories, those are the sorts of things that fire my imagination. But also it's given me the opportunity to look at the landscape of Lancashire and sort of include that in my work.
So describe your process to us.
Well, I always start with drawing. I'm a big fan of drawing. I think it's a fabulous tool, fabulous way to communicate. So I tend to start drawing into things that inspire me. I use lots of what I would call non-observational drawing techniques. So I make stencils. I use a digital projector, and I use that to start making drawings. And I often make stencils of objects or animals and use those to create a painting. So I start with the drawing, and then I tend to then work over that with earth colours of acrylic paint, so ochres, browns, greys, and then I start to work into that with all the other colours that I'd use. Evolution rather than revolution, and I think that's quite an interesting take on it. They evolve, and they might sometimes they evolve very quickly, and other times they build up and up and up. And they may seem quite flat and they may seem quite sort of patterned, but actually they develop with lots of different layers. And this process of sort of drawing and painting over and then working up and then painting over again can go sort of 3 or 4 times before I'm happy with how the finished picture looks.
Do you find painting quite meditative, or when was the first time you picked up a paintbrush?
I probably don't remember the first time I picked up a paintbrush. I've always painted and drawn. There's always been an opportunity to paint and draw when I was a kid. And I had a grandmother who liked to paint, and she used to give me sort of the ends of her oil paint tubes and bits of board and stuff to work on when I was quite young. But I I think my interest and something that I have to be careful of is that I really like the material. I like the physicality of painting and drawing, and sometimes that can sort of run away with myself. And if people who are looking at the work aren't creative or don't paint and draw, they might not see those things that I like in the work. So it's the actual physical process is what I really enjoy. And I don't think I would say it was meditative, but it is something that I definitely get lost in. It's one of those activities where you can, if things are going well and you're involved in it, that you sort of turn around and 4 or 5 hours have gone.
Do you always have a sketchbook with you?
Yes, I do. I used to have a fantastic coat with poachers' pockets in it, and you could put an A4 sketchbook in it. So I've always carried a sketchbook around, and I've kept all my sketchbooks from when I was on foundation. So I'm in the sort of mid-30s now. They're all numbered.
So tell us a little bit about your involvement with schools and what you do there.
Interesting background in how I've ended up teaching, in that I answered an advert on a creative database that one of the other artists, Mayan Wood, had put on when they were expanding Art Teach, which is the group of artists that work in schools. And so I mentored with Mayan. I shadowed her for 6 months, and then started working in primary schools, painting murals to start with, inside and out. And then I decided that I should get a formal qualification. So I did a PGDE at Bolton University for teaching people who are over 16. So I've had experience in teaching children in reception right the way up to pre-degree foundation students and life drawing and all sorts of things like that. And at the time, I'd been at home looking after my children. In fact, I found that the work although it takes time, it sort of feeds into the other creative work I do. And I think at the time I did, it gave me a boost, because I was, instead of being the guy that cut the grass and made the dinner and collected the kids from school, I was the artist, because that's what the kids always tell you, there's Mr. Rainham, the artist. And I found that quite stimulating.
Tell us about what work you're doing for the exhibition.
A story called The Well, where there's this wooden statue that stood on the land of this farm, and the people that work and live around it blame the statue for all their ills. So if things go wrong, if something gets broken, they blame Peg of the Well. And there's a character in the story who's sort of like the lady of the house, and she has a son, and they describe he's unwell, and they describe his illness as being a malady, a bit like madness. And some of my work prior to this touring exhibition has been about mental illness and the fact that there's a colloquial explanation of madness before people knew what it was, in describing the idea of birds flying around inside your head. There's an element of this in the painting where it's the boy with the malady. He's the son of the lady of the house who has this madness, and they invite the priest to come and, I don't know, exercise him or help him or cure him. And as he comes to the house, somebody grabs him and pushes him in the river in the fog, and they blame Peg of the Well, and it brings the lady of the house. She's so angry about it that she cuts the head off of the figure with an axe.
It was pretty violent.
It's pretty violent. A lot of these stories are pretty violent. It's like Grimm, isn't it? You know, there's so many of them are black. I mean, that's one thing that we want to try and reiterate, is that they're not specifically for children, they're for everybody.
What's the story behind The Jug and the Sixpence?
The Jug and the Sixpence that's the title of the story, and it's one of the first stories in the anthology of the book that we're working on. And that's a story about a milkmaid who goes and calls her cows, and she milks this particular cow, Silky, and while she's milking it, she hears a noise behind her, and she looks round, and there's this little blue jug and a sixpence left behind her, and so she doesn't really know what's going on, but she milks the cow into this little jug and leaves it. And this happens over a period of time, and it's obviously the fairies or whoever is coming to get milk from lovely Silky the cow and paying a sixpence for it. And this milkmaid accrues quite a large sum of money, and she's very sort of excited about it. And she's sort of keeping a secret. She wants to tell her lover, but she doesn't, and he encourages her to tell him, and so she tells him about this jug and the sixpence coming. Of course, so the next day it doesn't arrive. It's this thing about sort of if you work with the fairies, you have to work with them from their point of view. They don't want other people to know about it. So what I really like about the story is that there's some lovely sort of rural imagery in the beginning of it. It talks about it being a May evening and it's just rain, so that all the grass is bending over and all the primroses have a spot of silver in them and the blackbirds are in the cornfield. So there's loads of imagery in this story that really appeals.
It's interesting that everyone's going on their own little journey, all the artists.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, particularly after today, there's also that sort of cross-fertilisation between people's work as well. It's been really interesting to look and see what Patricia and Julie and Mayanne have done, and also the way that Jackie's approached the stories. And I think that may feed even more as the exhibition goes on, because I'm hoping to carry on making work even after the initial launch of the exhibition, so that there's new things for new venues.
So tell us about where you're going to be exhibiting.
We're going to Blackburn, we're going to Gallery in Ormskirk, we're going to Lancaster, we're going to Bury, we're going to Preston, and then we don't see that as sort of the end of it. That's the tour so far, but we're hoping to carry on and include other places in Lancashire. We've got Oldham and Rochdale both interested in the exhibition, and then we could maybe even take it further afield as well. Yeah,
like we were saying before, I think the work is just going to evolve and it's just going to get better and better and better. Well, all the work's going to be good, but I think you're going to get more and more involved and more things. You're going to hear more stories and new stories are going to come in, and that's going to inspire new work. So I think it's just going to be a really fascinating exhibition to watch and actually go on tour with.
I hope so, yeah. It has been really exciting. It's taken a long time to get this far, but I looking at what everybody's produced today, I think it's going to be a really super exhibition. And part of the reason why Oldham haven't committed to it is that they're concerned. They want to make sure that there are very high quality exhibitions in their spaces at the gallery. But I think when they see the work that's been produced, they'll definitely want to take it on board.
That's brilliant. I'm sure they will. The work that I've seen is just amazing. High quality and just really inspiring as well. I'm just really excited to find out about more of the stories. I'm really intrigued. I love the work that's been produced. It's going to be an amazing exhibition and definitely one to follow as well. Well, thank you so much, and I'll be speaking to you again throughout the exhibition. At the moment, thank you, Chris, for your interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would like to know more about Art Teach or their exhibition, The King of the Cats, please go to www.thekingofthecats.wordpress.com. Thank you for listening.